The room froze the moment she spoke. Her Spanish wasn't polished. It was personal, intimate, the kind of tone only a child uses with someone they once loved. The Mafia boss's father looked up, eyes widening, and whispered a single name that made every fork in the restaurant tremble. The Rosewood Grand was the kind of place that pretended the world outside didn't exist. Marble floors, chandeliers that sparkled like rumors, waiters who moved like trained ghosts. But to Aaliyah Tyrone, the restaurant was less a palace and more a performance stage, one where she'd learned to survive by saying just enough, smiling just right, and never, ever being remembered. She had worked there for 8 months, long enough to know which businessmen tipped to show off, which couples fought in silence, which regulars liked to talk to the help because it made them feel benevolent. She had also learned the rules of invisibility. Don't stand too long by a table. Don't make eye contact unless spoken to. And don't speak more than necessary, especially not in a language people don't expect from you. Aaliyah had perfected the art of silence. Her maroon uniform fit her like a second skin, her hair pinned into a neat bun that no shift could undo. But silence doesn't erase the past, it only delays its echo. She was clearing a corner table when she heard the maitre d's nervous whisper, "They're here." A hush rolled across the dining room like a polite storm. Guests glanced up from their wine glasses. Even the pianist's fingers seemed to hesitate above the keys. Two men entered. The first was tall, sharply dressed, with the kind of aura that didn't just command attention, it demanded submission. Brandon William. He wasn't listed in any corporate directory, but everyone in the city knew his name. You didn't cross him. You didn't question him. You just hoped he never learned yours. The second man, walking slightly behind him, carried age like armor. William Columbus, Brandon's father, the Mexican-born patriarch whose reputation for charm and cruelty stretched from Monterey to Manhattan. If Brandon was feared, William was revered. The kind of man whose smile could build a bridge or bury a body, depending on how he used it. They were escorted to table 12, near the grand mirror wall, where the chandelier light caught in their glasses and halos of gold shimmered around their faces. Aaliyah was assigned to serve them. She didn't flinch when the maitre d' handed her the order. She never flinched. But inside something twisted. The air around those two men felt electric, dangerous, like stepping too close to an old wound. She approached the table, notebook in hand, heartbeat whispering in her ears. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the Rosewood Grand." Her voice was calm, measured. "Would you like to start with still or sparkling water?" Brandon barely looked up, still. His father smiled politely, eyes soft, kind even. "Sparkling, poor favor." That accent softly rolled, familiar in a way that made her chest tighten. Veracruz Spanish, the same rhythm her grandmother spoke when she told stories of the sea. Aaliyah blinked it away and nodded. "Of course, sir." When she returned with their drinks, their conversation was low but charged. Brandon spoke like a man used to being obeyed. William responded with the measured patience of someone who'd seen men like him burn and rebuild their empires. Between them, an unspoken tension pulsed, the kind of thing that doesn't belong to strangers but to fathers and sons with unfinished wars. She poured William's water first, careful not to spill. His hand brushed hers when he reached for the glass, and for the briefest moment she felt him study her face. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked in that gentle Spanish-accented English that dripped of nostalgia and danger all at once. "No, sir," she replied softly. "Born in Mississippi, grew up everywhere else." He chuckled. "Everywhere else. That's a lot of places for someone so young." "I suppose it is," she said, "but it teaches you how to listen." That made him pause. He smiled, one of those smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes but wasn't unkind. A listener. The world needs more of those. Brandon interrupted. "Dad, let's stick to the menu." The tone was clipped, impatient. Aaliyah pretended not to notice, but she noticed everything. The way Brandon's tattooed fingers drummed against the table, the flicker of annoyance when his father ignored him, the faint smell of cigar smoke clinging to their jackets. Power, she thought, has a scent, and it's never clean. William leaned closer. "What's your name, Mija?" She hesitated. Guests rarely ask that. "Aaliyah, sir." He nodded slowly, as if turning the name over in his mind. "Aaliyah, that's Arabic, yes, means exalted." She blinked, surprised. "Yes, my mother liked the sound of it." "She had good taste," he said softly. Brandon's jaw tightened. "Are we going to order, or are we collecting biographies tonight?" Aaliyah hid her smirk behind her notepad. Men like Brandon always mistook control for strength. His father, she suspected, knew the difference. They ordered steak for Brandon, sea bass for William, a bottle of Bordeaux that cost more than her monthly rent. As Aaliyah walked back to the kitchen, she couldn't shake the feeling that something about William Columbus was familiar. Not his face, not his voice exactly, but something beneath it. A rhythm, a word she'd heard before but forgotten how to pronounce. She caught herself humming softly as she plated the bread basket, a tune her grandmother used to hum when the house was quiet. It wasn't until she brought the food back that she realized William was humming it too. The sound stopped her mid-step. He looked up. Their eyes met. Recognition flickered between them like static. The song. It couldn't be. Her throat went dry. The same melody Doña Carmen used to sing on humid nights in Vera Cruz. The one she said came from someone who left and never came back. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the dishes. Brandon didn't notice, but William did. His gaze sharpened, the warmth replaced by a strange intensity. "De donde aprendiste esa canción?" he asked quietly. "Where did you learn that song?" Aaliyah froze. "Mi abuela me la cantaba cuando era niña," she said. "My grandmother used to sing it when I was little." Brandon frowned. "English, please." But William wasn't listening to him anymore. His fingers tightened around his fork. His voice dropped to a whisper, almost reverent. "Tu abuela como se llamaba?" Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Doña Carmen," she said. The fork clattered against the plate. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then William leaned back, eyes wide, disbelief crawling across his face like light through fog. Carmen's Nina, he murmured. Aaliyah blinked. What did you say? He shook his head slowly, a ghost of a smile tugging at his mouth. You look just like her, Dios mío. Brandon set down his knife. What's going on? William didn't answer. His eyes never left Aaliyah's face. And in that moment, under the glittering chandeliers, amid the silent guests pretending not to watch, the air thickened with revelation. The world she thought she knew was about to unravel. For a man known for keeping secrets, William Columbus looked like someone who had just seen a ghost crawl out of his past. The room had gone still again, not in the dramatic way of movie scenes, but in the quiet, human way where even the clink of a spoon could feel like a scream. Aaliyah stood motionless, tray still balanced in her trembling hands, eyes flicking between father and son. Carmen's Nina, William repeated softly, as if the name alone could untie years of silence. You can't be. It's impossible. Brandon leaned forward, his voice flat. Dad, what are you talking about? William didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket, his hands shaking slightly. From inside, he pulled a small, worn photograph. The edges were curled. The colors faded into that old sepia haze of forgotten time. He stared at it for a moment, then slid it onto the table toward Aaliyah. She hesitated before looking down, her breath caught in her throat. The photo showed a young woman standing near a cracked wall covered in bright pink bougainvillea. She held a baby in her arms, a dark-skinned child wrapped in a faded blue blanket. The woman's face was younger, thinner, but unmistakable. Her grandmother, Doña Carmen, and written across the back of the photograph, in uneven handwriting, Aaliyah para cuando regreses. Aaliyah for when you return. Her knees nearly gave out. I don't understand, she whispered. William's eyes glistened. You wouldn't, you were just a baby. Brandon frowned. Wait, what are you saying? You know her. William turned to his son, his voice heavy. Know her, Brandon, that woman. He looked back at Aaliyah, almost afraid to finish the sentence. That woman is family. Aaliyah stepped back, her heart hammering. Family, she echoed. How could that be? Carmen was your grandmother, yes, he asked. Her daughter, your mother, was Isabel. Aaliyah froze. Yes. The name hung in the air like a confession. William's face broke into something between pain and disbelief. Then, Dios mío, Isabel never told you. Aaliyah shook her head. Told me what? That your father, he said slowly, wasn't the man she said he was. Brandon slammed his palm onto the table. Dad, he hissed, you can't just. But William's words poured out like floodwater. She was pregnant when she left Veracruz. She didn't tell me. I searched for her for years. But by the time I found Carmen again, Isabel had already vanished with the baby. The baby? Yes, sir. Aaliyah's lips parted. You're saying you're my. William nodded, emotion tightening his voice. Yes, I'm your father. The restaurant collectively inhaled. Glasses stilled midair. Somewhere near the bar, someone whispered, Holy hell. Aaliyah felt the floor tilt beneath her. Her first instinct was denial, to shove the thought out of her mind before it could bloom. But the pieces, her grandmother's lullaby, the accent, the photograph, they fit too perfectly to ignore. A truth too heavy to lift had just been dropped at her feet. Her voice cracked. You left us." William's eyes softened. "I didn't know where you were, Mija, if I had." "Don't call me that," she snapped, her breath trembling. "You don't get to." Brandon stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "That's enough," he said sharply, looking between them. "You're confusing her." "Confusing her," Aaliyah shot back, her tone suddenly sharper, her shyness peeling away like old paint. "Or exposing you." Brandon's jaw twitched. "Watch your tone." "No, you watch yours," she said. "You think you walk in here and—" "Everyone bows. But you—" She turned toward William, eyes glistening. "You come in here with your fine suit and your soft words, and you think a picture makes up for 25 years. William opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For once, the Mafia patriarch had no script. The silence that followed was thick enough to chew. Then a voice, soft, disbelieving, came from behind them. "Did she just say she's his daughter?" A ripple of whispers spread through the dining room. Phones were out. Guests pretended to sip their drinks while recording the unfolding scandal like amateur paparazzi. Aaliyah felt her throat tighten. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to wake up back in her apartment, where her biggest problem was choosing between paying the light bill or buying groceries. Instead, she stood in the center of luxury's stage, caught in a spotlight she'd never asked for. William rose slowly. "Aaliyah," he said gently, "I didn't come here to hurt you." "Then why?" "Does it feel like that's exactly what you're doing?" she said, voice trembling. Brandon reached for his father's arm. "Dad, we should leave." William didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Aaliyah, a storm of guilt and awe flickering inside them. "Let me explain, please." "I've had enough explanations from men who disappear," she said. Then she turned and walked toward the kitchen, the photograph clutched tightly in her hand. Brandon muttered a curse under his breath and followed her with his gaze. For the first time, his composure cracked, because behind his anger, behind the sharp suit and quiet menace, there was something else: fear. The kind that comes when the ground you've built your life on starts to shift. William sank back into his chair, his voice low. "She has her mother's fire." Brandon didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the door she disappeared through. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Aaliyah leaned against the counter, her heart racing. Her coworker Janelle peeked from behind the espresso machine. "Girl, what in God's name just happened out there?" Aaliyah didn't answer right away. She stared down at the photograph, tracing the faded ink on the back with trembling fingers. "I think," she said slowly, "I just met my father." Janelle blinked. "You're what?" "Yeah," Aaliyah said, almost laughing through the shock. "My father, the same man the newspapers call the gentleman of Blood Row." Janelle whistled low. "Honey, your family reunion just went Netflix level." Aaliyah pressed the photo to her chest, her voice dropping. "He said he didn't know about me." Janelle crossed her arms. "And you believe that?" Aaliyah hesitated. "I don't know what I believe." And hey, if you're watching this right now, tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Do you think Aaliyah should forgive him? Or should she walk away? Drop your thoughts below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the next part, because it's about to get deeper. Back in the dining room, Brandon leaned forward, his voice low but cold. "You realize what you just did, right?" he said to his father. "You handed that girl a weapon." William didn't look up. "You think she's a threat?" Brandon's jaw flexed. "No, I think she's a story waiting to ruin us." "Then maybe," William said softly, "we deserve to be ruined." Brandon's eyes darkened. "You've gone sentimental." William smiled faintly. "No, I've gone honest." He rose from his seat and straightened his jacket. "I'll see her again." Brandon's voice dropped to a near growl. "If you do, you'll regret it." But William didn't reply. He just turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving Brandon alone, staring at his reflection in the mirror wall, the flicker of candlelight cutting his expression into something fractured. For the first time in his life, the man who controlled everything had lost control, not to a rival, not to an enemy, but to a waitress with his father's eyes. The Rosewood Grand was quieter the next evening, but not by much. Money never truly sleeps, it just lowers its voice. Aaliyah clocked in early, though part of her wanted to quit altogether. She told herself it was professionalism that brought her back, but deep down, she knew better. Some part of her needed answers, and William Columbus had walked in carrying a whole lifetime's worth. When she entered the staff room, Janelle was already waiting, arms folded, grin mischievous. "Well, well," she teased, "look who came back after her telenovela debut." Aaliyah groaned, "Please don't start." "Oh, honey, the internet already did," Janelle said, waving her phone. "Somebody posted a clip of the whole scene. The caption says, 'Waitress calls Mafia patriarch Papa in five-star restaurant, watch the boss's face.' You're viral." Aaliyah buried her face in her hands. "Perfect, just what I needed." Janelle snorted. "Could have been worse, at least your hair looked good." "Yeah, that's what matters," Aaliyah muttered. She tied her apron a little too tight and forced a breath. "If he comes back tonight, I'm not serving him." Janelle arched a brow. "Girl, you think you got a choice. You're the plot twist now." Aaliyah didn't respond. She just slipped out into the dining hall, trying to keep her steps steady. She needn't have worried about seeing William right away, because he was already there. Same table, same chair, same faint smile. He stood as she approached, his presence soft but commanding, like a storm cloud that hadn't decided whether to rain or thunder. He looked older somehow, or maybe she was just seeing him differently now. "Buenas tardes, Aaliyah," he said gently. "May I have a moment?" She glanced around. The maitre d' gave her a nervous nod. "You can sit," he murmured. "He requested you personally." Her pulse raced. "2 minutes," she said, voice firm. "Then I get back to work." He smiled faintly. "Fair enough." They sat. For a long, awkward second, neither spoke. The air between them was heavy with everything unsaid, all the years lost, all the questions that no explanation could fully answer. William finally broke the silence. "You look like your mother." Aaliyah stared at her hands. "Don't." He paused. "Don't what?" "Don't start with flattery. You don't know me." He sighed. "You're right, I don't, but I want to." She looked up sharply. "Why now?" "Because I didn't know you existed until yesterday." Her throat tightened. "And I'm supposed to just believe that?" He nodded slowly. "You should doubt me, I deserve that." Something in his tone, calm, patient, laced with guilt, made it hard for her to look away. She hated that. She crossed her arms. "Then tell me why you left my mother." He exhaled heavily, leaning back. "We were young, foolish. I was involved in things she didn't want part of. When she found out, she left. I thought she'd gone back to Veracruz for good." "You didn't try to find her." "I did," he said quietly. "But by the time I did, she'd already crossed borders and made sure I couldn't follow." Aaliyah frowned. "Why?" William looked at her for a long time before speaking again. "Because she didn't want you raised in my world." That silence returned, but this time it felt heavier. Aaliyah stared at the tablecloth, her voice barely a whisper. Maybe she was right. William smiled sadly. She usually was. They sat like that for a while, two strangers bound by blood and broken years. Finally, Aaliyah spoke again, quieter this time. "I don't know what you expect from me." "Nothing," he said. "Just the chance to know you, to help if you'll let me." She shook her head. "Help? You can't fix 25 years with one dinner." "I know," he said softly, "but I can start with dessert." That caught her off guard, the way he said it, half sincere, half playful. She almost smiled and hated herself for it. Then she noticed something, a shadow by the bar, a man pretending to read a menu but watching them closely. William noticed too, his expression hardened. "Don't turn around," he whispered, "but we're being watched." Her pulse spiked. "By who?" He leaned slightly closer. "My son." She froze. "Brandon." William nodded. "He doesn't trust this situation." "Neither do I," she shot back. He smiled faintly. "Then maybe you two have something in common." Aaliyah's heart thudded as she glanced toward the bar, just enough to confirm it. Brandon sat there, one hand on his glass, eyes sharp as broken glass, watching them, calculating. "Is he dangerous?" she asked. William hesitated. "Not to me, not yet." "And to me." William didn't answer. Meanwhile, Brandon's voice murmured into his phone. "She's the girl from Veracruz," he said quietly. "Yes, the waitress. I don't like it. My father's slipping. I want her background checked, family, address, everything." He hung up and took a slow sip of whiskey. His jaw clenched. He didn't believe in coincidences. If life had taught him anything, it was that secrets always came wrapped in the prettiest smiles. He pulled out his lighter, flicked it once, and muttered to himself, "If she's a threat, she won't be one for long." That night, as Aaliyah walked home under the dim amber streetlights, she couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every echo behind her made her glance over her shoulder. But when she reached her apartment and locked the door, it was Brandon waiting outside. It was William's driver, a silver-haired man who looked too polite to be dangerous. He handed her a small envelope and said simply, "From Mr. Columbus." Then he left before she could ask. She tore it open. Inside, there was a note written in elegant cursive. "I can't change the past, but I can protect your future. Meet me tomorrow at the pier. Alone. W.C." Her stomach twisted. She didn't know whether to feel afraid or curious. Both, maybe. She sat on the edge of her bed, the city's noise buzzing outside her window, the letter trembling in her hand. "Protect my future," she whispered. "From what?" From the window across the street, a car idled for a long time before driving off, its headlights slicing briefly through her apartment. Inside the car, Brandon Williams' cold gaze followed her silhouette until it vanished behind the curtain. He lit a cigarette and murmured to himself, "You shouldn't have come back, sweetheart." The stage was set. One father trying to make peace. One daughter caught between blood and betrayal. And one son who didn't believe in forgiveness, only control. Tomorrow at the pier, everything would begin to unravel. The pier was the kind of place the city forgot, half drowned in fog, half swallowed by memory. Wooden planks creaked underfoot, seagulls screamed like they were warning someone too late. The salt in the air bit at Aaliyah's skin as she clutched her coat tighter and scanned the waterfront. It was nearly midnight. The letter said alone, but every instinct screamed trap. She walked slowly toward the end of the dock where an old black sedan idled, its engine humming low like a secret. The driver's door opened. William Columbus stepped out. He wasn't dressed like the man from the restaurant, no tailored suit, no silver cufflinks, just a dark overcoat and a quiet exhaustion in his eyes. "You came," he said softly. Aaliyah didn't move closer. "You didn't exactly leave me a choice." "I suppose not," he smiled faintly. "You look like her. Every day I remember less of Isabel's face, but seeing you, it's like time handed me an apology." "Don't romanticize this," Aaliyah said, her tone low but steady. "You left her alone. You left me alone." He nodded. "Yes, and that's something I will regret until my last breath." The fog shifted, curling around them like the ghosts of everything. Unsaid. For a brief moment, neither spoke. Finally, Aaliyah said, "You said you wanted to protect me. From what?" William's eyes darkened. "From Brandon." A pause, a sharp inhale. The name felt heavier than the air itself. "My brother," she whispered. "My son," William corrected softly, "and the only man I fear." He stepped closer, his breath visible in the cold air. "Brandon doesn't see you as family. He sees you as leverage. If he believes you're truly my daughter, he'll use that to destroy what's left of me. And if he does—" He stopped. "Then he'll remove the uncertainty." Aaliyah's voice dropped. "You mean he'll kill me?" William didn't answer. His silence said enough. She took a shaky step back. "You brought me into this world, and now you're telling me I have to run from it." His expression softened, but his words stayed sharp. "Sometimes survival is running, Mija." Aaliyah almost laughed, the kind of bitter laugh that doesn't sound human. "That's easy to say. when you've got men and money to hide behind. I have a rent-controlled apartment and a bus pass." He smiled faintly. "Then I'll give you more than that, a name, a place to go." "I don't want your money," she said. "This isn't money," he said, reaching into his coat. "It's a confession." He handed her a small flash drive. "What's this?" "Everything," he said. "Files, accounts, names, every crime Brandon has tied himself to, enough to bury him if he ever tries to hurt you." She stared at it like it was something alive. "Why would you trust me with this?" "Because you're the only person left I can trust," he said simply. "You're my blood." Before she could respond, headlights sliced through the fog. A second car rolled down the pier, black and silent. William's eyes narrowed. "Get behind me." Aaliyah froze. "Who is it?" "Brandon's men." The sedan stopped a few yards away. Two men in dark suits stepped out, the kind of faces that didn't flinch at violence. One had a hand inside his coat, the other smiled like a hyena. William muttered a curse in Spanish under his breath. "I told him to stay out of this." Aaliyah's heart hammered. "We have to leave." "Too late," William said, his tone grim. "They're not here to talk." The first man spoke. "Mr. Columbus, Mr. Williams says this meeting is unnecessary. You're making things complicated." William's jaw tightened. "He's wrong." The man shrugged. "Then you can tell him yourself in person." The click of a safety. The unmistakable hum of danger. Aaliyah stepped closer to William, her voice trembling. "You said he wouldn't hurt me." William's voice was steady. "Not if I'm still breathing." Then everything happened fast. The first gunshot cracked the night open like thunder. A bullet ripped through the wooden dock inches from Aaliyah's feet. She screamed, stumbling backward as William pulled her behind a stack of fishing crates. "Stay down," he barked. Another shot. Splinters exploded around them. The air stank of salt and gunpowder. Somewhere, a seagull shrieked as if echoing the chaos. William drew his own weapon, not with the panic of a desperate man, but with the precision of one who had done this far too many times. He fired twice. One of Brandon's men dropped. The other ducked behind the car, returning fire. Aaliyah pressed herself against the dock, clutching the flash drive so tightly her knuckles went white. "This is insane," she gasped. "He's your son." William reloaded calmly. "You don't understand. Brandon doesn't think in blood, he thinks in territory." The fog thickened, swallowing the scene. The sound of boots approached from behind. William turned, firing again, the echo bouncing off the water. Then silence. For a moment, all Aaliyah could hear was her heartbeat and the soft lap of water beneath the pier. "Come on," William said, grabbing her hand. "We need to move." They ran toward the end of the dock, where a small fishing boat was tied. The night air bit at their faces, the fog curling like ghosts around their feet. As they climbed aboard, Aaliyah's phone buzzed in her pocket. An unknown number. A text. "You shouldn't have gone with him." A B. Her stomach dropped. William untied the rope. "He knows where we are." She turned to him. "Then what are we doing?" He started the motor, finishing what your mother started. The engine roared to life, and the boat lurched forward into the fog, the city lights fading behind them. Aaliyah looked back at the pier, the splintered wood, the spilled shell casings, the faint outline of the men Brandon had sent, and felt something strange rise inside her. Not fear. Resolve. She turned back toward the dark water ahead. "You said you want to know me," she said. "Then you better start telling me everything." William gave a tired smile. "Fair warning, Mija, you may not like who you find." "I already don't," she said. "Now talk." The boat cut through the mist, vanishing into the night, father and daughter bound by blood, hunted by family, and carrying a secret that could burn down everything the Columbus Empire ever built. But back on shore, Brandon stood by the water's edge, phone in hand, the wind tugging at his coat. His expression was calm, collected, terrifying. He spoke into his earpiece. "They're running." The pause. "Let them for now." He lit a cigarette, the flame flickering in his eyes. "Every family has to learn the hard way," he said quietly. "That loyalty always comes with interest." By dawn, the fog had thinned into a gray veil hanging low over the bay. The little boat drifted toward a cove ringed by warehouses and half-sunk piers. William cut the engine and let the current do the rest. The sound of gulls replaced the gunfire in Aaliyah's ears, though her pulse still thumped like it hadn't got the memo that the shooting was over. William anchored near a rust-bitten ladder that climbed to a narrow pier. "We'll be safe here for an hour, maybe less." Aaliyah rubbed her arms. "You sure this isn't just another one of his properties?" He almost smiled. "He wouldn't touch this place. Too sentimental. Your mother and I used to meet here." That word again, mother, was heavier than the pistol still tucked in his coat. Aaliyah stepped onto the pier and looked back at the water, silver and restless. "You said she left because of what you were into. You make it sound like you were just in bad company. But you were the company, weren't you?" He nodded. "I built things, I destroyed things. I thought I could separate the two. And she found out. She saw something she wasn't meant to." His voice cracked, a sound she hadn't expected from a man like him. "Brandon's mother was still alive then. Carmen begged me to stop before I ruined both families. I didn't listen. Isabel did." Aaliyah's stomach tightened. "What did you do to her?" "I didn't touch her. I swear that on what's left of my soul." He looked straight at her. "But she saw me kill a man that night, and she knew once you see something like that, you don't come back. So she ran." He nodded again, "with you in her arms." A gull screeched overhead, as if punctuating the confession. For a while, all Aaliyah could do was stare at him. This wasn't the cinematic version of evil she'd expected. No violin strings, no grand speech. Just an old man who sounded tired of the echo in his own head. "Why tell me this now?" she asked finally. "Because Brandon found out she was still alive when you were born. He hired someone to track her. When she wouldn't give him what he wanted, she disappeared again. A year later, he told me she was dead." Aaliyah felt the pier sway beneath her. "You're saying my brother killed my mother?" "I'm saying," William said carefully, "that he might have." Her breath hitched, might. There was no proof, only his word and her silence. The gulls scattered suddenly. Aaliyah turned at the sound of tires, crunching gravel on the road above. A black SUV rolled into view, window glass catching the first slice of sun. William reached for his gun. "Stay behind me." But this time the door opened and only one figure stepped out, Brandon. No henchmen, no suits, just him, a dark jacket and that unnerving calm he wore like a tailored weapon. He walked down the dock, hands in his pockets. "Morning, Dad," he said. "You picked a scenic spot for a family therapy session." William kept his gun lowered but ready. "How did you find us?" Brandon grinned. "Dad, come on, you taught me half of what I know. You really thought you could vanish with her." He turned to Aaliyah. "You know, I did some reading last night. Birth records, immigration files, and guess what? You exist. You're legal, which means you're a very interesting liability." Aaliyah crossed her arms. "You mean I'm proof?" "Same thing in my world," he said. "Proof is just leverage with better grammar." "Why are you doing this?" William asked. "She's your sister." Brandon laughed softly. "Half-sister, and only if we admit what you did in Veracruz, which, in case you forgot, would ruin both of us." William's jaw tightened. "I've been ruined for years." "Then let me handle the cleanup," Brandon said, taking a step closer. "Give me the flash drive." Aaliyah's hand went instinctively to her coat pocket. His eyes followed the movement like a predator spotting a pulse. "You really think I'm going to hand it to you?" she asked. Brandon's smile thinned. "You really think you'll walk off this pier if you do?" For a second no one moved. The tide slapped against the posts. Then William raised his gun. "Don't, son. You'll shoot your own blood." "I already have," William said quietly. "Every day I stayed in this business." Brandon's face hardened. "You taught me everything I know, old man. Don't act surprised I learned too well." He lunged. The gun fired. Once. The sound rolled across the bay like a hammer strike. Brandon staggered back, clutching his shoulder. His expression was disbelief, not pain. "You actually—" "Go," William barked at Aaliyah. "Run." She froze. "I'm not leaving you." "Run." Another shot cracked, this one from Brandon's gun. William jerked backward, hit the railing, and went over with a splash. "No!" Aaliyah screamed. Brandon dropped to one knee, blood blooming through his jacket. "You shouldn't have made him do that," he hissed. Aaliyah's fury overrode fear. She kicked the gun from his hand, grabbed the flash drive, and sprinted up the dock. Brandon groaned behind her. "You run all you want," he shouted, voice ragged, "but you're still one of us." She didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned, until the sound of the ocean became the city's heartbeat again. By the time she reached the edge of the industrial district, sirens wailed somewhere distant. Maybe someone had called it in. Maybe William's people were coming. It didn't matter. The flash drive in her hand felt heavier than truth itself. She ducked into an alley, crouched behind a stack of crates, and opened her phone. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Who could she even call? The police wouldn't touch the Columbuses. The news would spin it. Then she remembered the quiet voice of her grandmother, a memory so clear it felt alive. When you have something dangerous, share it before they can silence you. She typed one message, attached the encrypted files and hit send to a journalist friend who owed her a favor. If she didn't make it out, the world would. Back at the pier, the water rippled once. William's hand broke the surface, blood mixing with salt. He pulled himself to the ladder, coughing, gasping. He was alive, barely. Brandon sat on the dock, pressing a hand to his wound, eyes scanning the horizon where Aaliyah had vanished. Father and son stared at each other through the fog, one broken by guilt, the other by rage. "She's not coming back," William rasped. Brandon wiped the blood from his mouth. "She doesn't have to. I'll find her." William coughed again, a grim smile cutting through. "Maybe she'll find you first." The scene blurred into morning light. Aaliyah on a bus heading north, the flash drive hidden in her shoe, a bruise darkening her cheek. She looked out the window as the city receded behind her. The news alert came through an hour later. Breaking: alleged Mafia heir Brandon William under investigation after leak exposes corruption. International arms deals. Aaliyah exhaled slowly. "Guess your confession worked, old man." She didn't know if her father was alive, but she knew the empire he'd built was cracking, and for the first time she wasn't running from the storm. She was the one starting it. The bus rolled toward the horizon. Aaliyah rested her head against the window and let the rhythmic hum of the tires calm her racing. Thoughts: she didn't have a home yet, but she had something better: direction. Outside, the first light touched the water, turning it gold. And somewhere far behind her, in the ruins of power and pride, two men, one old, one young, were finally paying for every silence they'd ever bought. 6 months passed before she came back. The headlines had burned bright and then cooled to embers. Crime patriarch's empire crumbles. William Columbus missing, presumed dead. Brandon William faces federal charges. By the time the city forgot how to pronounce their names, Aaliyah had learned how to say her own without shaking. She lived quietly in Baltimore now, waiting tables at a seafood joint where no one asked questions and tips were good enough to keep the lights on. At night, she took online classes, sociology and Spanish literature, the things she'd promised her grandmother she'd one day study. The nightmares came less often. The bruises faded. But some debts aren't paid with time, they wait. It was a rainy afternoon when the envelope arrived. No return address, just her name in careful cursive. Inside, a ferry ticket, a single key and a short note. "The house by the water still stands. I'm not gone yet. W.C." She stared at the paper until the ink blurred. Then she packed a small bag and boarded the evening bus back south. The house sat on the edge of the same bay where everything had broken. The windows were dark, the air heavy with the smell of salt and pine. She stepped inside quietly, half afraid the place would vanish if she breathed too loud. He was there, thin, pale, leaning on a cane but alive. "Hello, Mija," he said. For a moment she just stood in the doorway, rain dripping from her coat, all the words she'd rehearsed dissolving. Then she walked in and set the key on the table. "You could have called," she said. "I didn't think you'd answer." "You're probably right." He smiled a little. "You're still your mother's daughter." She crossed her arms. "You're still yourself." "I'm trying not to be," he said. "The doctors say I shouldn't even be walking. I told them I had unfinished business." Aaliyah looked around the room. Maps, files, old photographs, a half-empty bottle of medicine. You hiding from the world or waiting for it to finish you? "Both," he said, "but first I needed to see you." She sat opposite him. "You got your empire burned, your son's in federal custody. The world knows your name for the wrong reasons. What else do you want from me?" "Forgiveness." She laughed once, sharp and dry. "That's expensive." "I've got nothing left to pay with," he said, "except the truth." He told her everything. About the night in Veracruz, the man he'd killed, the bribes, the threats, the slow rot that had turned business into crime. About Brandon's birth and how ambition had devoured love until family was just another investment. He didn't spare himself. He didn't beg. He just laid it out. Like evidence. When he finished, the rain had stopped. Aaliyah sat back, her eyes raw but dry. "You think confessing fixes it?" "No," he said, "but it's a start." She looked at him for a long time. "I don't know if I can forgive you." He nodded. "You don't have to." "But I don't want to hate you either," she added quietly. "I'm tired of carrying your sins." That made him smile faintly. "Then maybe you're already freer than I ever was." They sat in silence, the kind that isn't empty but earned. Finally, she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded letter. "It's from a journalist friend. The feds are offering immunity if you testify. They'll protect you. Witness relocation, new identity, the whole thing." He raised an eyebrow. "You want me to disappear again?" "I want you to live differently," she said. "This time for real." He studied her face. "You've grown strong." "I had to," she said. "You left a war behind and someone had to end it." A week later, she watched from a distance as federal agents escorted William Columbus onto a plane bound for a safe facility. He turned once before boarding, cane steady, and gave a small nod, half farewell, half blessing. She nodded back. The wind off the bay was cold, but for the first time in years it didn't sting. 3 months later, the story hit every major outlet again. Former crime lord testifies against son in exchange for immunity. Brandon William faces life sentence after father's testimony. The trial was long, brutal, televised. Brandon never looked at his father once, though when the verdict came, guilty on all counts, he smirked, as if losing the empire was still better than losing control. When it was over, Aaliyah stood outside the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions she didn't answer. She just walked down the steps into the crowd, anonymous again, finally invisible on her own terms. She stopped at the corner, took out her phone and scrolled to a picture she'd saved. Her grandmother in Veracruz, smiling in the sunlight, holding a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. She whispered softly, "We're free now, abuela." Months later, in a quiet cafe by the harbor, A barista turned up the volume on the TV above the counter. A news anchor was saying, in an unexpected act of restitution, former crime figure William Columbus donated his remaining assets to fund shelters for children of incarcerated parents. Aaliyah looked up from her coffee, surprised. The barista shook his head. That guy was a monster. She smiled faintly. Sometimes monsters try to clean up before they die. He shrugged, maybe. Outside, the sun was setting across the bay, turning the water the color of forgiveness. Aaliyah took a deep breath, pulled out a small notebook and began to write her story, finally in her own words. The book came out 2 years later. Bloodline, The Waitress, The Father, and the Empire. That fell, critics called it brave. Some called it revenge disguised as literature. She didn't care, it was her truth. At the back of the book, the dedication read, "For Isabel and Carmen, who taught me that silence is never safety. And that family is the choice you make after the damage is done." If you've been following Aaliyah's story all the way here, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. Because stories like this one always sound different at midnight. Hit like, share it with someone who believes redemption is still possible, and drop a comment. Would you have forgiven William Columbus, or let him face his own empire's ruin?